Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the IP3 podcast. I'm Kevin, joined today by none other than Alex Becker. And it's been a minute, been almost 4 weeks since the last time we've gotten to do an episode of IP3. Had some, uh, initially some travel conflicts because both Ray and I traveled to Tampa for the Rosetta world premiere, which was awesome. Um, but then I continued being not in Ohio for quite a while, and since I do the recording around these parts, uh, weren't able to get an episode in for a few more weeks.
But we're back. Have no fear.
Have no, uh, but what you do have is Flesh and Blood in Mexico. That's today's big news. It's cool. It's not surprising. They already have the product in Spanish, and while Mexican Spanish and Castilian Spanish that they speak in Spain are certainly not identical. It's probably a relatively easy next region for them to expand to because I don't think they have to do a whole lot more regionalizing. Or I guess I would be surprised if there's two different Spanish print products that they come up with. But does mean cool things because there's probably going to be a calling in Mexico at some point, and that would
Calling on the
be
beach.
yeah, turn it into a whole vacation. My wife has family that lives down there, so perfect. Turn it into a whole thing.
I know where I'm staying.
uh, what else? The world premiere happened. It was sweet. I used up all of my good sealed pool luck on the day of the world premiere. I did 4-0 it, so there's my bragging right. But I maintained my streak of never having made day two of a calling because while two of my sealed pools on Saturday had germinate, my one uh, on day one of the calling did not, unfortunately for me. So ended up going 4-3-1 and just missing the cut. I mean that two rounds worth, but um, still a better sealed deck than what I opened in Barcelona when I dropped before round one and saved myself the pain of trying to do the impossible. Um, it was a sweet event. The As much as I was I don't know, frustrated is harsher than I mean it to sound, but at times frustrated during spoiler season because I wanted to like brew and I wanted to know more cards and I wanted to know things so we could start working on it. The extra hype of you know room of 800 people all cracking packs at the same time. Like I'm pretty sure I'm the first person who found a copy of Snuff Out and like posted it anywhere. Um, and it was really cool getting to have a lot of those surprises on that day.
Yeah, I was saying
Um,
all of spoiler season. Like, I really hate this. Like not knowing because I'm a deck builder, so I like building things and making wacky things. Um, I was like, I really hate this. If I was going to the world premiere, I would love it because it'd be super sweet. But since I'm not, I hate it. But I think it makes for a cool experience, and then also kind of makes um I don't know, like evens the playing field. So everybody gets like all the information at the same time. Everybody starts from the same starting line, basically.
yeah, as much as I wanted things earlier, it definitely you know we you're obviously a brewer and we have a good number of other people who are chomping at the bit to know what was coming and start sketching out deck lists and figuring out how things were looking and even get that super advanced practice on TTS because you can make your own image files. But everybody not knowing and like not knowing the legendaries until the day of the world premiere definitely pumped the brakes on what could be explored in a worthwhile fashion prior to the actual world premiere. So in that, they absolutely succeeded. Um, I think, and I,
Would
I
not
think
surprise me if
there's,
that was partially a goal.
yeah,
If
I
that
agree with
was
that.
if that was an intentional, a
Yeah,
feature, not a bug.
absolutely. Because look, we all know that they know that TTS and Talishar exist, and obviously the Talishar folks are wise enough to make sure that it's not really can't go play CC in their queue before it's actually release day and everything, right? Like that's all very well thought out and intentional. But you know, if people had the cards, they'd be grinding games from the get go, and it is reasonable to want to slow down how quickly decks and heroes get solved, right? Um, I do think I don't know. It was neat. I think that they will. I'm sure they will continue perfecting their spoiler season strategy and everything. Um, but I do think there's actually some interesting room to improve or do some other cool stuff there. Uh, Particularly, basically like in the area of like social media, right? So when when these cards got spotted by people, people pull out their phones and they take a picture and they post it in Purple Discord or on Twitter or something. But it'd be kind of sweet if they had if you think you're the first person to find a card in a set, snap a picture of it and like put it on Twitter and tag FabTCG, and whoever's the first person to like find something new, they send that like prepared nice image of the spoiler card, attach it to it, and I don't know, kind of just lets people play along with the end of spoiler season there.
That would be cool. I feel like the logistics for that might not work out because then obviously everybody's opening their sealed product for the first time at the same time, and then FCT is just gonna get hundreds of hundreds of like tweets at them, which like could be good. I mean, obviously it's like a big social media like boom if you have a bunch of people using your hashtag at the same time. But then it's just like, okay, I just got 30 people tagging me in this snuff out. How do I figure out who was first?
Yeah, all right, that's fair. That's fair. Might be a little big for the scale of the LSS operation right now, but still kind of a neat idea. But yeah, world premiere weekend was sweet. Um, Rosetta is just is super cool. The set is uh, okay. Admittedly, sealed is a little Earth imbalanced, you could say, but it's not. I don't think it's quite as egregious of a sealed format as others in the past, but it's not quite as balanced as uh, like MST was, I think. But part of that might just be the one talent does a thing that's a lot more effective in a longer game, and sealed pools are lower power on average, so the games drag on and tend to go longer, and that's the whole point of the Earth talent. So,
Yeah.
but the games are great. Uh, the life gain as your defense to arcane and all of that, I guess, aspect of it, like like they crushed it, right? Like when you're first like, oh well, how are they going to have you know an all arcane set without arcane barrier? People will just die. All the damage is unblockable. Well, yes, and also no. There's a lot of interesting room for skill expression, particularly in the area of the macro. I frequently, if you're playing against a wizard and they go first and like, awesome, amp one with the staff. Here's my zap for 4 damage. I definitely at the world premiere was like, okay, snap off, pitch all of this into the macro and save my life while it doesn't cost me any cards. Uh, but yesterday, I took a zap to the face because I was like, there are more important zaps for me to stop from hitting. And yeah, I don't know. It's a cool. There's a lot of interesting for skill expression, which even just with the macro, not even regarding anything else. But
And there's
um,
even there's even reverse, like we were drafting on Sunday, and like I think I think I showed a couple people that okay, you're sending this zap for 3, and they're at 3, so they have to prevent it somehow, which means they have to use either well grounded or the macro or discard an instant to gain life or prevent damage, something like that. So you can let them do that, and then after they do that, decide if you're going to discard this arcane twining to amp it by 1, because you can respond to the instant. You can't respond to like arcane barrier being used, but the arcane barrier is not in the set. So you can see if they're just barely, if they're only going to prevent one of it, and then you can bump it over by 1, and then your Trailblazing Aether still gets go again, or whatnot. You can play a little mind game rather than just like
So,
amping before you play the spell. Just like have it all be up front.
arcane attack reaction of sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Works
sweet.
doesn't work as well in constructed where people actually have arcane barrier because you can't respond to prevention, but you can respond to people activating instants like the macro and well grounded and discarding stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but yeah, World Premiere was great. The calling was cool. A lot of familiar faces in the top 8. Turns out Hamilton is very good at this game. Uh, so is
Those
Lucas
Lucas.
Oswald. um, yeah, but no, that capped off a really sweet world premiere weekend. Um, I unfortunately didn't get to do any pre-releases because uh, the following weekend was at a buddy's bachelor party weekend away, so I went down to Hocking Hills, Ohio, and played board games for like 4 days. It was a cool follow-up to world premiere weekend, but a lot of not being at home.
Not
How did
recorded
pre-releases go for you?
podcast.
Hmm?
uh, it was good. My first pre-release I went to, I think, yeah, I went to 3 total. My first one I went to and opened Marvel Adult Briar, so that's pretty sweet. Don't play Runeblade though.
Wonder who
So
has that now.
yeah, good thing I know somebody who
Interesting.
likes playing shiny Runeblade cards. Um, I was very close to playing Acilio, but ended up not doing it and just playing Florian being boring. Florian deck was pretty good, um, but ran into a better one later that evening. So
It'd be like that.
yeah, and then my second release, I did play Acilio, and I just blew people up. It was very cool.
That yeah, the when you can get the lightning pool in sealed, it's disgusting. It's like when we were in Outsiders format, I wanted nothing more than to open the really cracked 6 packs that would give me the dreaded great Riptide pool where you're just like, dope, I got all these arrows, I got good 3 blocks, like I'm gonna send attacks for, like 9 and 9 and 9, and eventually you're gonna die and it's gonna be great. Doesn't matter that I don't have a weapon, but unfortunately that is a very, very rare occurrence.
Yeah. I
That
think I I sent a spell at Rhea for 9 arcane, I think, at one point, and then she went to one start of her turn, trigger harvest season, and oh look, I drew my one of Comet Storm, and I will shock you to kill you.
it's
That's
kind of
Wizards do
wild.
on your turn.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how many games come down to little plays like that. I know that in the calling, actually round one of the calling, I played. Uh, I was Florian playing against Aurora, and on the turn that I was sending in, like 11 damage or something. I think the macros already used. They weren't able to stop it. But I, expended my resources, put all the offense out there, and they're like, shock you, because it was like, now I was definitely one. They were not, but they still just weren't going to be able to defend all this. And they're like, okay, in response to your attack, shock you. And my arsenal was the reverse polarity or reverse arcane polarity. And so it was
Mhm.
just like, in response to the deal one, I will gain one first, and then it goes through. It was yeah. That even in constructed, when you you were playing Mark when he was playing Acilio the other day, and you're like, cool, gain a life to go up to 2. And he's like, poison the well, you go to 0. uh,
Yeah.
and that actually, I think that happened to Mark in the calling too, where it wasn't with life gain, but it was like opponent attacked. Mark's like, okay, cool, shock you, and they're like, shock you in response to go over the top. Uh, crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
It's a
A
good
lot
sign
of
though when the
a lot of
games
interactions.
end
Yeah.
end by single points rather than 30.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, release weekend was just this past weekend, and I got to go draft a few times, which was sweet. It's my first time getting to draft Rosetta. Um, I I was like, I'm definitely playing a Room Blade, so I started taking good Room Blade cards. Uh, and as it turns out, all the people to my left were just all lightning heroes. So very quickly became apparent in pack 2 that I was like, oh nope, I'm definitely Florian because I have good Room Blade cards, but I'm seeing like no lightning cards. So, almost almost 3-0'd my first draft. Um, I played a crazy game against an Aurora that uh, somersaulted me 3 times, I think. So yeah, so like each somersault was worth at least 4, and I think two of them were 5 and one was 4. And I got fatigued by the Aurora by a card. So close.
Yeah.
But the games are sweet though, and it's honestly just cool that Aurora can do that. I think that's actually, you know, in my head when I think Aurora, I think, okay, cool. Well, we definitely want all the 0 for 4s because that curves nicely with making embodiments and swinging the sword and everything. But if your deck is just chock full of really solid 1 for 5s, that's a lot of, you know, deck damage per card that you can do with some of her explosive turns.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Um, what else? What else? Oh yeah. Quick aside on Living Legend. Everybody knows Kraken's Aether Vein is broken in half. Uh, I'm sure LSS knows Kraken's Aether Vein is broken in half. Drawing 15 cards in a turn is not okay, even in Living Legend. Uh, and it will probably run roughshod over the PQ Plus event in Milwaukee this weekend, just so they get to like see it happen one time. And then they're going to get rid of it. They're going to fix it. They're not going to let Kraken's Aether Vein
Like
spoil Chicago.
yeah, kind of like W Hammer Spy. It's legal for one event. Like they knew it existed. Like we got to watch Spy blow a bunch of people up on stream, and then everybody be like, "Okay, we're all in agreement. This card's banned." Yep.
Too good?
Okay.
Too good? Too good? Okay, yep, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead and
And if
ban.
you don't know, their Kraken's Aether Vein is Icelander's signature weapon, which LL'd with her. Um, but it's 3 resources and deal a point of arcane. And if and you draw a card for each damage of arcane dealt this way. So with the new amp cards that buff any type of arcane damage being dealt, not just uh, action cards, uh, putting amp 12, 15 onto Kraken's Aether Vein, and then drawing that many cards because nobody's got Arcane Barrier 15. That's quite good.
Yep. And then you
Too
just,
good, I would say.
fire breathing for 60 or so.
Yep.
Casual 60.
15 Arcane and 60 Physical. Any response?
Poison the well. Okay, I die. Um, yeah, so LL, have faith in LSS. They know what's going on. Living Legend's going to be in a really sweet place by the time we hit Chicago. Kraken's Aether Vein will not be a problem. keep brewing what you're brewing and just pretend Aether Vein doesn't exist because it's not going to be around. Um,
But a little aside on Living Legend, I'm terrified of Kano because he's scary with the new zaps and without the books, and he was scary with the books. But in Living Legend, where he gets the books and the new zaps, I I don't know what to do.
25% of his deck in Living Legend will say draw two on it.
Yeah.
25%. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that'll be pretty good. Yeah, LL's about to be nutty. But I skipped over some news. So before we go and talk about counting your blessings, um, there are some sweet 5th anniversary events coming up in conjunction with World Championship weekend. Uh, they, if you've seen them, there's a bunch of really cool anime alternate art versions of Viserai, Dorinthia, and New. And those, I'm not sure if they're cold foil or rainbow. Actually, no, I think they're rainbow foil.
yes.
Uh, Versions of those heroes will be available at the World Championship. There was a big like package thing with them that had a playmat and sleeves and other crazy stuff that like sold out the same day they announced it for like $800 or euros a piece kind of thing. Went totally bonkers. But the good news is you get a shot to get some of those. I think because I think they're having these like 5th anniversary events at LGS's.
Yes.
So we don't know exactly what like the pricing is for those LGS events that weekend, but
I think
would
they're
not be
the
shocked
fifth.
if some of those heroes are in there.
I believe they're the fifth anniversary packs. So the packs that have cards that we don't know. I think we assume that the heroes are in there. Um, but we also don't know what else is in there. I think maybe only James knows what's going to be in those packs. But it was going to be the only way to get those was the world premiere. But now, or I assume this has always been the plan, there's going to be select local game stores that will have these 5-year anniversary events. And I don't know how they're going to do pricing for that. It's it's hard because you want to me, ideally, everybody who wants one can get one, but you don't want everybody who wants 5 to get 5 because you want them to like be a little exclusive. So it's like
Yeah.
how many do you allocate to each game store that everybody who goes to that event can get one, but you don't end up with questionable people having a bunch of them.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm definitely interested to see what way they decided to go, right? Because like there's a world where they're like, here's 16, and you cap your event if you want, so that everybody can get one, or your event can be however big you want, but there's only 8 of these packs, so give them to the top 8 finishers or something like that. But I don't know. I'm just interested. I want to know what is in them. Uh, but the other news as a part of this World Championship and 5th anniversary event announcement, uh, there was a time in Flesh and Blood history when the notion of Ira Crimson Haze as an adult hero was laughable. Why? Because Ira gets 1 free point of value every turn of the game. Well, been 5 years, and Flesh and Blood has come a long way from the Crucible of War meta and era of gameplay. Uh, and as such, Ira Scarlet Revenger is making her way into Classic Constructed as a super fancy cold foil promo for World Championship attendees, and then possibly some side events over there. I'm not sure. But never fear. I believe rainbow foil versions of the Ira promos will also be available with the 5th anniversary events at your local game stores. Um, it is exactly what you'd expect. It is Ira with 40 health. So your second attack each turn gets +1. Everybody's Nightmare is back. The 2-card, 8 value play of Harmonized Kadachi into Command and Conquer for 7. Uh, Coming to a combat chain near you.
Rangers weep.
Rangers weep. But fans of like defensive ninjas rejoice because you can do that again. You can play Flick Flax back on the menu. Um,
Wax on.
yeah, and honestly, the because her she has the most generic hero text in the game, which is not a knock. There's like some really awesome elegance to its simplicity, but she's kind of a blank slate, right? Like aside from whirling mist blossom kind of pointing you in the direction of you want to hit a bunch of times, there's nothing, you can do whatever you want with her in terms of
I completely
combo
forgot that card
lines
ever
and
existed.
yeah, that is a CC, that's a CC card now.
Yeah.
That is a tome. For those of you who don't know, Whirling Mist Blossom is a uh, Ira specialization. I gotta pull it back up because it's been a minute. Whirling Mist Blossom is a one cost, two pitch, two power Ira specialization uh, ninja attack action. It's a two block, and then if Whirling Mist Blossom hits and it's the second or higher chain link in a row to hit, draw two cards. Razor Reflex, anyone?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's possible that Fab's outgrown this a little bit, as we've sort of been talking in recent episodes about, people's armor suites kind of growing up a bit, getting a little more robust. Um, but
I'm running wizard with 7 armor right now, so feels weird.
all right, but it's an Earth Wizard though. It's not, it's not like Kano's running around wearing a suit of armor, but
Unless.
unless, unless. Um, But yeah, so Ira is coming to CC, and that's going to be awesome. It's actually the most interesting part of them releasing Ira. She's not legal for the World Championship event itself, but she is legal for the Osaka Calling that starts the next day, um, which is an interesting decision, but kind of a cool one. It doesn't hurt anybody, right? Like the main event's still going to be the main event, and the person who's like, "Oh my God, I've been waiting 5 years for them to make Ira an adult," they get to go live their dream
And,
too.
and also, it's not like there's a bunch of like weird rules interactions that people aren't gonna know. Like Iris, the
True.
oldest, the
Yep.
oldest hero,
Yep.
both in lore, I'm pretty sure, and also
Yeah, that's the part I'm
distance.
interested in too. Is like in Fab lore, she's been dead for a long time. I'm pretty sure. Like she was certainly a skeleton at this point. So maybe she's a zombie. Secret shadow hero confirmed.
Maybe she's been Arachne the whole time.
Pulls the mask off. It was me. I want you to know it was me.
Uh,
All right. Well, World Championship stuff is going to be sweet. Be on the lookout for when your LGS puts up those event infos. I was looking today, and I don't think they've been posted yet, but I will surely be hitting up at least one of those if I possibly can. And then the other upcoming news that probably is not a surprise to most people, but ProQuest Season 5 is October 5th through October 27th. So coming up, less than 2 weeks away. Make sure you get your Rosetta cards ordered and on the way. I think I'm sleeving up Florian ProQuest season, at least for one
uh,
of them.
I'm summing up burdens.
Oh yes, if it was not incredibly obvious by our card frame borders this week, the IP3 is in fact Team Earth. Um,
All
we
three
were,
of us.
yeah, it was undecided for a little while. I played a handful of games with like constructed Aurora, and don't get me wrong, it's cool. It's a deck I would definitely play, but it doesn't like feel as cool to me as Florian feels. Aurora just gave me 5 vibes, which is okay. You know, there's a chance I still play it someday, but it's not the thing I want to be like digging into deep right now and getting ready for ProQuests and such.
Yep. And this will be the first wizard that I play. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then even Rhea
had to
initially was
had
like,
to had to find Stormstriders.
yeah, gotta source those. Uh, Rhea was a little undecided between Acilio and Like, I knew she liked Verdance because Verdance looks awesome, but also was super intrigued by Acilio, and I think she's still intrigued by Acilio, but like in the I'm gonna let somebody else do interesting things with you and just be amused by it sort of way. Uh, she's also been on
She
the
got the
Verdance
Verdance
train with you.
Marble. She got the Verdance Marble, so I feel like the decision's been made.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Um, all right,
Are
before
you ready
we
to count
jump
our
into,
blessings?
oh, I'm ready. So, count your blessings. It's been all the rage, and by all the rage, I mean kind of just a meme in the last week and a half. Look, all right. So, for those of you who aren't aware, Count Your Blessings is a generic instant from Rosetta. It costs two. It comes in red, yellow, and blue. And Count Your Blessing says gain X life, where X is 3, 2, or 1, depending on the color. Uh, 3, 2, or 1, plus the number of Count Your Blessings in your graveyard. So, for the people who have not done the math, if you play 9 copies of Count Your Blessings and you play out all of them over the course of the game, all 9 cards, you will gain 54 life. That's a lot of life. That's more than your starting life total. Um,
How can I ever beat a hero that gains 54 life, Kevin?
well, dear reader, there's many ways. And the easiest answer is hyper aggro. This card is an instant. It does not block. It is ironically bad at, you know, when you think life gain, you think, oh, okay, I'm going to gain life. I'm going to get healthy. That's the sort of thing you do to, to defeat aggro, right? Like that's the first instinct I had when looking at this card and hearing the people start talking about it. But the value proposition on playing a count your blessings, um, playing a count your blessings, like the first 5 copies of it, is terrible. All right, Sigil of Solace is a 0 cost, just 1 card, gain 3 life.
I think
If you're
the upside to these are they don't cost an action point. Like for example, nobody plays Healing Bomb because it is like a card for 3 life that uses an action point. But Count Your Blessings and Sigil of Solace are both instants, so you're able to do an action and then also use the rest of your hand by doing this. The trouble is, versus someone like Katsu, for example, that has a mass trigger, probably a Whelming Gust Wave, maybe like emergency release. If you're running 9 copies of this card that doesn't block, like Katsu's gonna get to draw like 2, maybe 3 cards. Is that really worth your X or your life gain? Like he probably just countered all that in that same turn for all that life that you did gain.
and you know, it's easy to say the flashy number of, oh, well, if you play all 9 of these, you gain 54 life. Well, these 2 cost instants that you're playing also could have been, 9 3 blocks in your deck, which is 27 extra life if you defend with all of them. So it's only 27 more life than 3 blocks, which again, only 27 life. It is a substantial number if you get to it, but it's not a card that you want against an aggro deck. Count Your Blessings is where it potentially poses a threat is cleaning up like mid-range matchups or slower grindier games, right? The control dash type decks that on their own turn they get to have a lot of modularity with their costs, right? Because if you're like, okay, well I want to, play this Count Your Blessings to get out of my hand, well I'll do that, and then I'll load my pistol and I'll load my chamber and I'll shoot 2 and I'll load the pistol again, and uh, it's a tool that will help them grind people to a pulp in the late game. But at the same time, it's still 9 no blocks in your deck, and you need to survive to get the to get the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth copies cast, so you actually start getting respectable value for the card that you're playing.
Kevin, I'm just not going to cast them all. I'm just going to use Rally the Rear Guard to discard them, and then they become block threes.
All right, well, you got me. You got me. Rally the Rear Guard. That is a legal card that you can play, and it can help Count Your Blessings not look quite so embarrassing. Uh, for those of you listening, Rally the Rearguard is a generic attack action. It's a 2 for 6 in red. It's a block 2. Um, Comes in all three colors and has an activated or an instant ability that when it's blocking, you can discard a card from hand and give it +3 defense. So you can turn it into a 2 card, 5 block, and get the Count Your Blessings into the graveyard for later. Um, which when you're discarding the blues and the reds is fine, but you know, it definitely helps make them slightly less embarrassing when you're trying to survive against an aggro deck. Um, but also discarding those cards aren't free. There's still, when you discard that Count Your Blessings, if the first one you discard is a red, all right, cool, your 54 life is now 51 life. You still got the 3 value for it, but it just doesn't. I don't think the maths. I don't think it's. I think people will play Count Your Blessings, but I think it is a bit overrated and a little overblown. The threat it poses to Fab.
As soon as it becomes popular, like the counters just come out. For example, Poison the Well. I'm gonna play this Count Your Blessing for. I'm gonna heal 11 off this red one because all 8 of my other ones are in my graveyard. And then I'm just gonna respond with, all right, here's Poison the Well from my arsenal I've been sitting on because I've seen that you're playing 9 copies of Count Your Blessings, and instead of gaining 11, you're gonna take 11.
Now
Or
that makes 54 life instead be 32 life. You gotta spend 1 card to do it, but it's not much better than those just being 3 blocks in the first place. There's
or if
Reaping
you're a
Blade.
Rune Blade, yeah.
You've got multitude. You got 2 options for weapons to counteract some healing if you're a Rune Blade. There's Reaping Blade and Dread Scythe. Reaping Blade is powerful because it's always on. There's nothing invested to do it, and I think that actually makes it the better option of the two. Um, Dread Scythe only works, once they've taken damage, but Count Your Blessings is an instant. So if it's just going to strand to Count Your Blessings, you could certainly hurt their value and like mess up their curve with having to play
Force
your
them to use
instant
it on
early.
your turn, and that strands a resource that they were going to use to load the pistol or do something else.
Yeah, but I still just don't. I don't think it is quite as effective at its job as Reaping Blade is. Just that it's always on. Um, Poison the Well you mentioned. That's the haymaker, right? If you poison the well, you know the fifth and the eighth copies of Count Your Blessings, you made it look kind of embarrassing. Or even better, if you are a hero who can regularly play cards out of your banish zone, Talisman of Cremation. Talisman of Cremation is a blue item, and one of the trinkets from Everfest that
They've come back
people who
around. The carnival slot wasn't a joke after all.
took a few years, but we got there. We got there.
Yeah, healing potions now being played too.
uh, Talisman of Cremation, yeah, it's a 0 cost item with Go Again. It's a blue. When you play a card from your banish zone, destroy Talisman of Cremation and name a card. Banish all cards with the chosen name from each opposing hero's graveyard.
Bye bye.
See you later. You know what looks really bad if you can't play the last 3 copies that you have? Count Your Blessings. Because the last 3, look, that 54 life, you get 30 of it from the last 3 cards. assuming they're all the reds that are last. So okay, that plus or minus, it could be a little less than 30, but you get in the realm of half of that life from the last 3 copies of Count Your Blessings that you cast. And Talisman of Creation just kind of laughs at you, banishes 3 copies from your graveyard, and says, "Yeah, have a nice day." Uh,
It have to be your graveyard, right? Like you can't use news hero power and play something from your opponent's banish
yeah,
zone.
it says
Does
when
that
you
work?
play a card from your banish zone.
Okay.
So Levia could get, well, who am I kidding? Levia is aggressive enough that Count Your Blessings should never be a problem for Levia. Um, Realistically, it's Vincent is the biggest uh, gainer of Talisman of Cremation if it's a real problem. And honestly, she's one of the heroes that would most need Talisman of like a tool to fight Count Your Blessings because Flail of Agony is finite because Vincent's not playing Count Your Blessings, and so she's going to hurt herself plenty along the
I,
way.
I devastatingly saw Evan set go to 1, assuming that they were going to be able to swing the flail over the weekend.
Yep. I
I
also
was like,
watched that
oh
game.
no.
I have also just done that in games myself, and it is as devastating as you think it is. Like, oh, I had this great game-winning play lined up, and now I just can't do it. And the worst part was, like, had he done the math differently, or like accounted for the life that he had to pay, or I think it was the gloves. There was the +1 from breaking scales that like did an extra point that I think they weren't expecting.
Yeah.
Um, but they could have just blocked more, like continued playing the little game and tried to set it up differently. But yeah, brutal, brutal. Katsu is unforgiving, even in the now Bonds of Ancestry-less form that he finds himself in. Uh, but yeah, hyper aggro could have beaten up Count Your Blessings decks. Rune Blades, particularly well positioned to fight back against them with their anti-life gain cards they have access to. Poison the Well, generic blue card tech that any deck can slot in if they think they're going to end up in a in a Count Your Blessings type scenario, right? You don't even need to run 3, right? It's not like I need to load 3 copies of this blue instant into my deck. Like 2 copies is enough. If you just hit
It, if a
any of the
deck is
last
playing
4, it's
9,
great.
yeah, if a deck is playing 9 copies of Counter Blessing, you're probably gonna have time to find the poison the well. Game's probably not gonna be over quickly.
Yep. Um, but yeah, that's it. Count Your Blessings. It's a real set of cards. People will play them. Sometimes they'll be good and they'll win games. But I outside of specifically like Control Dash, I don't think there's another real competitive deck that's going to be entertaining playing Count Your Blessings.
The only thing I could think of would be like Decimator Warrior decks because they have 1 action point. So if they're ever left with extra cards, they can just play Counter Blessings. But like I don't know. I still don't. This could just be block 3s,
That's
like you
it.
said.
And maybe
Yeah.
somebody, maybe Charles Dunn goes out of his way to prove us wrong. He's certainly the most likely candidate to do so with this card. But yeah, I think here at the IP3 we're non-believers in counting of your blessings. But release weekend was this past weekend. There were a handful of events globally. Obviously, there was plenty of armories and things everywhere, but a couple uh, higher level competitive events took place around the globe. The most notable, probably battle hardened Sydney.
But not the first. The battle on the bayou was the first.
It's true. It's true. Down in is it in Dallas? I think. Now I'm
Texas,
doubting
not
myself. It was definitely in Texas. I did.
Texas.
somewhere
Don't
in
really see.
Texas, which admittedly that's like a quarter of the United States by itself. So
We did
we haven't
send
narrowed
some
it
of
down all that much, but there was the Battle in the Bayou.
we did
Uh,
send some Eclipse members to that event too.
True, very true. Um, but that one had top eight of that event was two KOs, two Enigma, Riptide, Florian, Verdance, and Aurora. Which
Riptide was the only person, the only Riptide at the event, that event.
oh really?
Just
Oh,
saying.
that's awesome. I
Yeah,
didn't know.
yeah.
Um, and then I do think that, that's the Florian that was a Count Your Blessings Florian deck, right?
No, that was Yuki.
Oh, duh, never mind. I got it backwards. It was, got it. I got it switched. Um, yeah, Yuki Lee Bender, spectacular player. Also, XO'd a Battle Hardened when KO was brand new too, and I think she was playing KO at that event. So making
Yep.
a habit of
I think
XOing
she
events on
lost.
brand new heroes.
I think she lost to Majin Bay, right? Kano.
I don't remember. I was having too much fun in the lower end of that particular Battle Hardened, but I came away being
Anyway,
like,
it's
this
not
deck is
important.
super real. Yeah, not important. No, no, I didn't. I totally didn't just like go like 4 and 3 out of that one too. Um, but it happens. You are not your results. You're better than your results. I had a freaking blast. uh, but yeah, then there was also, or no, so the finals of that PQ Plus, that was Saturday. So it was technically the first rated event to finish in the world. Uh, do you remember what the finals of that one were?
No.
No? Okay. I'm pretty sure there was a KO in it. It might have been a KO mirror now that I say it, but uh, so I don't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure a KO took it down. I could be wrong. Call me a liar in the comments if I'm wrong. Don't call me a liar. I'm not lying. This is my best guess. Uh, Battle Hardened Sydney, top eight was a little mostly samey, but a few oddballs thrown in here. So we've got one KO, two Kano, one Enigma, two Aurora, one Florian, and one Katsu.
I thought Katsu was dead. What do you mean?
Turns out week one events are a great place for specialists who know their deck inside and out and will play it perfectly while a bunch of people are learning new interactions and playing new heroes. Is a pretty sound decision.
And a deck that punishes you for like blocking incorrectly when
Yep,
everybody's playing new heroes that they haven't figured out how to block with yet.
right. Well,
Yep,
and it's you're not on bonds, so it's a whole new. There's plenty of people who started playing in Fab only since Bonds
outsiders.
Katsu was a Bonds deck and didn't know what it looked like before Bonds of Ancestry
Wait, what's
existed.
what's Mugenshi release?
What
What is
on
this
earth?
card?
What is this yellow card doing here? You can
It
grab
does
all of your
what
Lord of
now?
Winds.
Lord of the Wind
uh,
does what now?
uh, yeah. So honestly, like, I don't think I will say. I guess the Katsu is probably the only thing genuinely surprising from either of the sets of top eights. Um,
I think Riptide's kind of surprising because um, we just got two new wizards and two new rune blades injected into the format, and he is notoriously for dealing poorly with arcane damage. So that surprised me a little bit, but I was very excited about it because I like Riptide.
yeah, that's fair. But also, if there were two KO, two Enigma, and those are considered pretty good matchups for Riptide, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I know that Battle of the Bayou, the like Aurora was one of the top most represented decks. Or I think there's like a four-way tie for first. But anyways, I was just surprising to me. But we were also seeing in the Battle Hardened Riptides doing well in that event too. They just didn't make top 8.
Yeah,
So
true.
maybe Riptide's not as dead as I thought he was.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, I
maybe
think
people just haven't figured out the wizards yet.
that that is true and very possible. Like I think Acilio is probably a problem for him because Acilio only is kind of only
It's
going to
action
attack when he's going to
focused.
attack you like 5 times in the turn. um, but yeah, no, like overall, I think this falls within the realm of expected. I guess the other probably only surprised how quickly they adapted, but the two Kanos in the Sydney top 8, um,
It was the
you know,
Kano finals, by the way.
Kano finals, which means Kano certainly is not dead. Turns out when they banned his books, they had also gifted him uh, with some arcane spells that are also books. So now there are 9 cards instead of just 6 that say draw 2 on it in Kano, despite
Yeah.
the banning of the books. Uh,
So the uh, the banning of the books kind of really hamstrung the pitch deck, which I think being able to um, like draw so many cards with all your books every time you saw them and set it up so that you would draw more cards on like a big combo kill turn. That was very, very consistent as long as the like good Kanos can do that very consistently, and I'm not sure what deck can beat that. Maybe new because they have a chance to make Kano shuffle their deck. But with the books being taken away, it just makes Kano more of a um, high roll deck, which when you lose to it, it's gonna feel really bad because you're just gonna be like, oh, my opponent got lucky because they hit 2 of the draw 2 zaps off the top and like killed me with the wildfire and I couldn't do anything. But I would argue that if Kano was still able to pitch stack, the outcome of that game would be very similar. I think most decks have more of a chance into like the as it stands, very powerful, but very variance filled Kano more than old Kano where they can just like set up a really good pitch deck and even if you counter pitch deck with Oasis, you're still gonna die.
yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's still at the end of the day, it's still just a wildfire deck. The way that they get to it is a little bit changed, but that's the crux of it. Is they're gonna wildfire you for 6, and they're gonna hope that you can only stop you know
3, 4.
1 to 4 of it tops, and that the other 2 to 3 connect, and then they rattle off open the floodgates. The
Yep.
Yeah, open the floodgates.
I
Um,
think Stir the Aether Well is the game 2 resources one, I
that sounds
believe.
right.
Think of.
Yeah, open the floodgates. Yeah, so it's not a zap though. At least if it was a
Yeah.
zap, this could have been more of a problem. But at least open the floodgates costs some resources to do its thing. Is it still bonkers? Absolutely, but that's what Kano is here to do. Um, it being a 3 block is pretty good. I want more.
Yeah.
I want more 3 block non-attack actions in my Runeblade deck.
Quit your complaint. You have Reaping Blade. You can deal with the count your blessings.
That's true. That's true. My
Happy
Runeblades are
sarcasm.
certainly spoiled at the moment. I have no complaints. Also, we did just get new Runeblade 3 block non-attack actions too. So Condemned to Slaughter, really sweet.
So question with these like 2 events that we've seen so far. Obviously, we don't have a lot of um, info to go off of. But what would your sleeper pick be for heroes to spy upcoming ProQuest season?
This is gonna almost sound like a cop out pick, but it's gonna be Zen as my sleeper pick. I suspect that rumors of his demise have been exaggerated. You know, whenever they did the initial yellow and blue bonds bans from CC, they they mentioned that they like just hadn't the versions of Zen that they tested and deemed acceptable for play weren't 9 bonds or super heavy bonds of ancestry decks, which means so obviously losing Art of War hurts, but you know bondsless Zen was designed to be a hero that could hang in classic constructed. And Chase the Tail is still a pretty absurd card. And that armor suite took no hits. There's still a 7 fridge that can draw two specific cards at very key moments in the game. Um, I don't think it's I don't think it's like still S tier best deck, but I think it's still good, and I think if people are expecting it to fall off the face of the earth, they will be surprised when they still get 20'd.
Yeah, I feel like nobody's really been talking about it because like been playing it for so long, and like so many people have had complaints about it that it's like, oh, okay, I don't like they took away um, they took away Zen's good cards, so I don't have to. I'm not gonna spend time building it. I'm gonna like mess with these other heroes. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe, maybe. I mean, obviously the deck is not gonna get better without bonds, but I would agree with you that I think people are gonna not be thinking about it and then get paired into it at ProQuest and be like, wait a minute, this deck still does a lot of damage.
Yeah, yeah, it's good, it's consistent, it has better access to spike turns too. I think like that's what Zen's hero ability brings to the table really well. Is like, okay, cool, this good 5 card hand can be kind of a good 6 card hand at the same time, and whereas Fi, particularly without Art of War now, is going to struggle to do anything more than you know like a consistent you know 12 to 14 damage per turn. But I think Zen still has the ability to spike some damage, but also Zen's off turns are going to look like kind of whatever Fi turns. And you know Fi has been much maligned in recent months, but it's not wrecking worlds anymore. But it's still extremely consistent, and extremely consistent pressure is a good place to be in the game of Flesh and Blood.
They're still gonna run needles. Or are people gonna go back to the tiger taming Kakara?
I think you probably have to go back to Kakara. I don't think you Needles were only good when your offense was so incredibly overwhelming that your best way to play defense was to try and bait your opponent into blocking your destructible weapon. And Zen is not that strong anymore. So I think we are Kakara gamers again.
I agree.
How about you? Who's your Rosetta sleeper pick?
Gotta go back to the roots. I think there's a lot of cards that don't block that are being seeing a lot of play in the 7 newest heroes. So I think Dawnblade Dory is something that has been gone just long enough for people to skimp on your defense reactions. Oh, I'm gonna add this poison the well to counter those counter blessings, so that um, like all those cards don't block. So you can gain a bunch of health with counter blessings, um, but the Dawnblade's still gonna hit, and it's gonna get bigger and bigger, and eventually it's gonna deal more damage than 54, and a lot of people haven't played against it, but there's a point where like Dawnblade just becomes unblockable. Like it's dealing so much damage that even if you throw your full hand at it, you're still gonna
Yeah,
get hit
even
by it.
even a single react could put over what you were possibly capable of blocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Downside of it is we've gotten a lot better armor suites, but to counter that, once you're kind of through that, I feel like there's a lot of cards that don't block. Especially if you're playing as Cilio.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's a race that I bet you Acilio is probably favored there. It's good
Could be.
pressure, but I don't know that it accumulates quite quickly enough if he can get his 50 damage turn lined up.
I feel like most decks die to that though. So
True, but I just don't think Dory pressures a ton super quickly usually.
yeah.
But we'll ask Mark. We'll be like, Mark, is this a good matchup for Acilio?
And he's
Tell
gonna
us.
say, "I've never played against Dawnblade Dury because I started playing
Yeah.
in Uprising."
True statement. Uh, but yeah, it's we knew he was in a good place with Acilio. He's like, I have created a spreadsheet and just laid out all of the math on like, here's what a 4 card hand with this card in it can possibly do, and a 5 card hand, a 7 card, just crazy stuff.
That's
Um,
usually what I'm doing.
yeah, no, it's nice to see the new spreadsheet once per set mantle taken up by somebody else this
Yeah.
time.
My fingers are getting hurt from doing
Yeah.
this so many times.
um. All right. So we talked about results. We talked about sleeper picks. Before we call it an episode, we'll talk through basically. I think there's about 12 or so heroes that I would, and not in any particular order, like tier list wise, but about 12 heroes that I would say I would not be at all surprised to encounter at a constructed ProQuest. Um, so I think the easiest to start with are probably
And a
KO.
caveat,
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
a caveat being that like your one tricks, your local one tricks are still gonna play. You got that Betsy player, they're still gonna play Betsy.
Yep, the
But
Arachne, the Teklo, they'll show up, but
yeah,
we're talking sort of on the larger percentage of heroes played, things you wouldn't be surprised to see. Um, and I think the first two are probably just KO and Enigma. Uh, First of all, I think Enigma not necessarily S tier, but I think she dictates a lot. She still has a pronounced effect on the metagame and the decks that can compete in it because I don't know, there's just a few different
being
types
an
of decks that are
illusionist just makes your matchups super polarized. It's like
yeah
you are really good into some heroes and really bad into others. So
yeah
oftentimes, um, illusionists have been able to mitigate their bad matchups to the point where like they're quite playable and popular. See Dromai, see OG Prism. Uh, that wasn't that wasn't the case with Zen and Enigma though. The Enigma Zen match was so bad for Enigma that no amount of tech could fix it. Um,
yeah.
but with that deck being toned down, might be able to find enough.
um, so
What
yeah,
else?
Enigma, KO. KO is just sort of the model of consistency. um, I maintain that KO is still the healthiest best deck that Flesh and Blood has ever had during the heavy hitters meta. um, Very good, very consistent, not without his own weaknesses, but gets to run a healthy enough dose of the disruptive 2 for 6s, depending on what the meta looks like, with Rune Blades and Mechanologists looking up Erase Face is particularly enticing and probably is going to be in a lot of sideboards, a lot of sideboards. So be
If it's
ready to
not in your
block that card.
sideboard, think about it.
Yeah, strongly consider it. Amnesia gone the way of the dodo for the time being, but Erase Face is probably where it's at. Um, but he's just solid. Good numbers, great equipment suite. Even potentially got a nice little upgrade in. Oh, I just blanked on the name of the card. The one for
Letter
five.
Skull. No,
No, not Splatter
no.
Skull. I think just
No.
Reinhardt plays it. Smash Up.
Mashup.
Yeah. So the new generic one for five. It's a two block. It says when this hits an opponent, they flip a card in their arsenal face up, and if it's an attack action, they banish it. Right. So it's a sort of one for five CNC light type effect. Um, so a little and KO, it's still a six for all of your bruting purposes. So that could be a nice little add. Um, yeah, we just never count KO out. I think that deck is very solid all around. Um, next one's kind of weird, only because the armory decks, the Dash IO armory deck comes out in the middle of PQ season. Um, but Dash IO, I think, is you know in a fine spot to start, and in a really like definitely in contention to potentially be the best aggro deck in the format after the Armory deck releases. The
We don't
new,
even know all the cards out of it, right? But we've just seen a couple of them that seem incredible.
yeah, I think the big elephant in the room is there's a blue item that will let her draw like I think draw twice basically. So there's a mechanologist kind of split tome, I guess is the best way I can describe it. It's not exactly draw two on this turn, but it's not a brick for boosting, which is big. It's an item, so it can be played off the top with Dio's ability. Um, and she's already capable of pumping out immense amounts of damage, um, and that's only going to add to her aggro onslaught once it releases. Um, so yeah, that's definitely one to be on the lookout for. Next up,
I'd,
oh, go ahead.
I'd also expect to see quite a decent amount of like Aurora and Florian and New. I think those are just going to be popular heroes. Aurora and Florian, clearly because they're new and have shiny new toys. New because just a lot of people like that deck, and it can mess up people's game plans no matter what deck you're playing.
Yeah, I agree. The floor on each of those decks is pretty high, and the ceiling even higher. Interestingly, I think the Earth Heroes are totally fine playing against New because New will just help them turbo turn on their hero ability. Um, but yeah, I think they're all good choices, and people will definitely be out in force playing Rune Blades, particularly because of how long it's been since there's been one at a prominent place in the format. Um, relatedly, Vinset and Viserai. Um, Vinset uh, is easily the most viable she's ever been in a format in the history of Flesh and Blood. Um, Deadwood Dirge is a huge get for consistency and also explosiveness because there's a lot of situations where that card can act like a pseudo Revel in Runeblood to let you do some crazy double gate shenanigans. Um, yeah, the deck's just strong. Turns out the cards were the rune gates were pretty strong the whole time, and what we were missing was a few more good rune chant creation and enabling cards.
All
Uh,
she needs now is a couple shadow non-attack actions that aren't
oh, for the
embarrassing.
love of God, yes, please. Look, I can handle Beseech the Demagon being in my deck. Funeral Moon's pretty cool. Shadow Puppetry is my favorite, but like the next best thing that's like a zero cost one is Tear Through the Portal. What? I don't even play that. You wouldn't even play that in draft. It's okay. Monarch 3 right around the corner. I know that they're holstering them until then. That's when Vincent will become the menace that we're all waiting for her to be.
I hope not.
um, and then Viserai, whole kit upgrade. Whether you're trying to do more setup, when you're trying to just go a little more classic aggro, snuff out is a huge gain. Machinations of domination, no, of dominion. Machinations of dominion is it's a 3 block blue mob skies that you know so you get to slide more of your go again enablers into your resource package that still blocks good, which is really nice. um, I don't know if he's got I don't think he has the top end level of aggression to compete with Dio, but snuff out and succumb to temptation and consuming volition, there might be enough decent disruption that can sort of help keep him in line with some other more aggressive decks. Um, it's a deck I want to play again. There's so many possible directions to go with it though that it's overwhelming. There's 1 cost aggressive lists that play Nebula Blade, 2 cost aggressive lists that play Reaping Blade. There's 1 cost aggressive list that still play Reaping Blade. There's setup lists that try and do mid range and set up 6 Rune Chants and pump an Arc Knight Ascendancy and then Rattlebone something like it. There, that hero is wide open, absolutely wide open. And
If you don't have Arcanite Ascendancy in your deck, don't talk to me.
I'll put one in the 80 just for you, so we can keep recording these episodes.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah. All right. And rounding it out, we've got a few more, that you should be on the lookout for. Uh, and I think that is Dash IE, the original. Um, Probably more leaning the control dash or like switchboard type dash builds. Um, Verdance, also very solid. Has a good like base fundamentals game plan backed up by a like pseudo combo finish that can nuke you from a pretty healthy life total if she's able to sort of execute the full portion of it. Um, Azalea is still a very real deck. Red in the Ledger is still disgusting. Um, and yeah, she can still just attack you for 17 dominate on some turns. Uh, and to close us out, everybody's favorite, Alex's favorite at some point, Prism. Uh, I think the Earth Heroes innately run a decent number of poppers, but not a ton of them are sevens. So maybe there's some room there for Prism to take advantage.
Yeah, I think Prism is kind of like one of those one-trick heroes. She's just much more powerful than a Betsy or an Olympia or something like that. But I think if we're saying, oh, somebody might play Prism, and you get a picture of one of your locals in your head, they're probably gonna play Prism.
Adam France. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Um, and again, they're your own local PQs. There's going to be people on everything. There's going to be Kanos and Asilios running around. There's going to be, very, very determined Zen players who are like, no, we're not dead. We're still here. That person who really likes horses, so they keep playing Victor. They'll do it. They'll trudge through it and hope to dodge that enigma in the top 8 and make the most of it. Um, yeah, so be ready for anything, but those dozen are probably the most likely culprits that you'll face this upcoming season. Uh,
Let us know in the comments what hero you're gonna take to your ProQuest and events. I'm curious what our listeners lean to.
or if you're drafting, forcing and draft, or all right, maybe not forcing, right? Like if you stay up, you stay up, right? Have good gaming fundamentals and all that. But if you could draft any of the 4 Rosetta heroes, who would you prefer to draft? Um, cool. Well, I think that wraps us up for today.
That does it. Well, we're back, so I think we should get a pity like for being back. And then if you actually liked it, then you should just subscribe. We're like our subscriber count is slowly going up, which is a cool thing to see.
Pretty
I
awesome.
think the Prism deck tech that we did has like we're so close to 3,000 views on it, which is way more than I ever thought would happen. But the deck is quite outdated now, so
We need a new busted deck to do a deck tech on.
yeah. Ray and I are still arguing about Verdant's cards, so once we both win ProQuest on that hero, then we'll
That
talk
then
about
you can
it.
argue about it for an episode, and it'll be great.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Kevin can go nap.
I had something I was gonna say, and I just completely lost it. It's gone.
Uh,
Gone.
our schedule, we're gonna pay you back for the weeks that we missed. So we're planning on recording next week, right? Our limited set
Oh,
review.
yes. Yep, that was it. That was the thought that I had that disappeared briefly. Yeah, so the limited set review we're going to record and release next week. So hopefully, leading up to draft ProQuests, that'll be a good time for a lot of folks. And then the week after, we will have another episode, and that will sort of have us back onto our regular cadence of every 2 weeks through the rest of the year at that point. Thanks for hanging out, everyone, and see you next time.